Hi, I'm Ying from GovInsider. I'm here at the Civic Punks interviewing speakers from our Women in DPI panel. So for Nicole and Puja, can you sort of briefly introduce yourself and why are you championing women in building digital public infrastructure? So maybe Puja, you want to go first?
Thank you, Ying. My name is Puja, like you know, and I'm very happy to be interviewed here. Some brief introduction. I'm a lawyer from India, but I work with the German Development Corporation in this really fascinating project called GovStack. And I've also had the great privilege of organizing a few GovStack Women in GovTech Challenge like cohorts with partners of our program.
Thank you. And I'm Nicole from Trinidad and Tobago. I am part of cohort number 3. 2026 GovStack Women in GovTech Challenge, and so that's how I know Puja. And here, really happy to be here today. Why I'm championing women in DPI? Because I think that women's voices are underrepresented in tech, just in general. I also think that it's critical for DPI solutions to be successful because there's so much more that is dependent on it. We already see that technology solutions, if they aren't properly designed with the stakeholder in mind and properly aligned with your strategic objectives, there's so many times where it's a waste of an investment or an underutilized investment. We can't afford for that when we're dealing with digital public infrastructure. There's too much at stake, and so I think women need to be part of that design of those solutions, etc. And they have to be part of at the table, not just to check a box and say, okay, well, women and inclusion, but because women represent 50% of the voice, there's a perspective that you don't want to miss. Women in technology, we know are underrepresented. We know that those are male-dominated fields, and when we think about adoption and trust, adoption is contingent on building trust in your solution and communicating what the solution is about, making sure that there's a match with the needs, understanding the needs of the stakeholder. All of those things come under communications and PR, your strategic communications. And if the strategic communications aren't in the room at the time that the policies are being made, then you are missing out on a huge opportunity. So that's a really, really big thing. And another, just a data point to add to that, when you think about marketing and PR, that is, you're looking at like 60 to 64% women in those fields. And so you have on one side, you have technology, women are underrepresented, and then you have the fields where they are overrepresented, they're not in the room. So, it's something that we need to fix because there's a bias there, structural bias that we're not talking about that needs to be addressed. And it's really important. We've heard it a lot over the last couple of days, empathy and trust in achieving successful outcomes and adoption. So that's why I'm doing it.
Okay, thanks, Nicole. And first for Puja, I would like you to sort of elaborate a little bit on the GovStack's Women in GovTech Challenge. And I've seen that transition from ideation and design to prototyping. And why is this hands-on technical development important for women leadership?
Yeah, just to tell you a little bit about the GovStack Women and GovTech Challenge, I think what's really important to know, and Nicole, you also mentioned that women are really severely underrepresented in digital public infrastructure, in conversations about e-governance, and you would think in 2026 this is not a problem, but clearly it very much is. And we've had a really interesting journey where we started with about 109 applications and participants in 23. We moved to 180 in 24, and now in 26 we have 280. Right? So you can see that the demand for it exists, and it exists only because women really need a space where they can build a community. And through this program, we are trying to equip women through this journey of 6 to 8 weeks where they meet also people from around the world. They get to know each other, and these are also women who work in digital, who want to or who want to work in digital, who come from different levels of seniority, either their early career, mid or late career, and they're not just technical. They're policy makers sometimes, or they work in the social sciences, or they're academics, or they work in civil society. So it's a very interesting mix and a very interesting group to really see them come together and bond on one thing. And there is this feeling of community and passion for really creating this kind of sense of making a change and seeing that they want to visibilize the work women are doing, and they also want to equip themselves with the skills to be able to do that. To come back to your question, why did we move from asking them to do wireframes to prototypes? So this time we're experimenting with making these women in our training program learn how to make prototypes. the last time also, they were one step below that. So they learned how to make wireframes. And why? First, we received a lot of feedback from our participants from the previous cohorts asking us if we could upskill them a little bit more, because they really wanted to be able to create a fully fledged prototype that they could use later. And the second thing, and I think that's really important, is that it really makes anyone feel like you don't have to have a technical background. So you can be someone from the social sciences, but through these 6 weeks of 90-minute lectures per week and like more hands-on assistance during office hours, so we really run like a mini university, that you can get out of it and you can confidently say that now I understand technical conversations, I understand APIs, I know how to use specifications, I can build a prototype. So we're experimenting. I don't know if it will be a success, seeing, but my fingers are crossed. And really, like, I'm a lawyer by training, and I also find it so confidence boosting that when I'm in this sector, I can like engage with a course like this, because I'm also now able to say I understand technical things better. And it is my passion to work in this ecosystem. So you don't have to be born or study or trained to be an engineer or trained to be like technical, but there is a lot of value in upskilling yourself. So this is also why we moved things a little bit. We made it a little bit more academically aggressive, but Nicole will be a good person to tell you if it works or not in the end.
Yes. So I really hear it. So it's from doing that you gain confidence, for the women to gain confidence. And I think what really speaks to me was the diversity in the women that's represented in the challenge. Maybe I might pose this question to Nicole. Why do you think this diversity and this community matters in building confidence?
Why the diversity matters? Because I think the community building is really important, right? Understanding what challenges different people are facing, how they're solving it, having somebody to bounce ideas off of and whatnot. I think the diversity is really important because you're going to find yourself reflected somewhere. There's somebody that you're going to be able to get some good advice that resonates, who's relatable. So I think that's really, really important. And I think any opportunity to sort of challenge yourself to grow and think a little bit differently and receive that mentorship and receive the opportunities that are presented to you, I think is a great thing. So I'm a big fan of the challenge and the opportunity. Thank you, Puja. Thank you, everybody at GovStack.
All right. Okay. Thank you
Does
so
that
much.
answer your
And
question?
I do have another question, because
Sure.
DPI tends to be framed as a very technical field, right? And how do we sort of, you mentioned about diversity of women represented in the challenge as well. How do we reframe that narrative to show that policy, communications, and empathy are just as important as the technical code of the infrastructure?
You want me to take that? I think just over the last couple of days, we heard so many stories from male leaders. I mean, primarily male leaders who said they spoke to trust and empathy. I heard those two words said so many times on that stage over the last couple of days. So there's obviously a need for it. They are stating that these are the challenges that we're facing, and we know that this is what makes a solution make or break, right? What makes it a win or not. And so I think that coming back to our cohorts and our groups, the women having that representation of women who are representing the underrepresented view, as well as just having that sense of empathy or being in the fields that you just mentioned there, the communication, the other fields, those are all supporting industries or fields that are really, really important to support not just the technical thing. It's not just a standalone. The technology alone, if you put it out there, you can have the most flawless system in the world and put it out there. If you're not communicating correctly, if you're not getting it in front of the right persons, if you don't have the legislative support to ensure that people feel represented, that you're not excluding persons and whatnot, that you're not introducing bias by overlooking certain things, then you're not going to have a successful DPI implementation. So it's really, really important to have all those views at the table.
Okay. Puja, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I just want to say that I think there is no dichotomy that because it's digital public infrastructure, it has to only be technical. There's a whole army of skill set you require in order to have that implementation really effective, right? You need policymakers, you need academics, you need civil society, you need people to be able to criticize what's going on, because they also have to understand exactly what's happening at the level of specifications, what's happening at the level of designing this kind of digitization. And most importantly, I think, seeing as any policy, you also need people who are cognizant of the fact that there is digital exclusion and who are aware that there is a class of people who just cannot be included because they've been structurally so left behind. So I would say that yes, there is very much a need to understand digital public infrastructure as not being technical, but I also want to say I think that understanding exists. Everyone is aware that you need to have a full policy, you need to think about other aspects, and that's why it's digital public infrastructure. And we moved from using terms like only digitalization, right? Because now it's about the ecosystem, it's about thinking about all of society. So I find the question a bit creating a false dichotomy, which I don't agree with. Okay. But it's good to say that, and I really agree with Nicole when she says you need all these kinds of skills and you need these values to be able to create a successful DPI.
Okay. So I do hear there's a multifaceted perspective on DPI rather than thinking of it as an infrastructure. And I think the very last question, one word. I think through maybe Nicole's observations of successful DPI and maybe through Puja's experience with the Women in GovTech Challenge, what is one universal trait that you see in successful women leaders in DPI? Whether it's Estonia, Kenya, or South Asia.
I see a lot of passion. So that's my word. It's a passion. I can't explain it. Can I?
Yes.
Can I? Okay.
Purpose in combination with the passion. I think the passion comes from purpose. I think once you are we're not supposed to explain. No. I'm still going to explain because I'm passionate. So I'm going to explain. But I think being aligned with your purpose really helps you. You're committed to delivering the best solution, and then when you get into this kind of space, you're connecting with other people who are similarly aligned by purpose and passion. And so I think the purpose and the passion allows you to get past that imposter syndrome that you may sometimes have and demand a seat at the table and provide the perspectives that are really, really important so that we can refine how we approach DPI.
Yeah, I think the word itself sort of says a lot about, it goes back to the heart. It goes back to connecting with others.
Yes, absolutely.
Well.
Yeah.